and gentlemen, welcome to 7 Kinds of Mischief. Felt like I was a little off there at the end, just a little bit different. It was a little bit different. Welcome to 7 Kinds of Mischief. Usually I'm, a lot more punctuation with the mischief. I think I was off just a little bit, tad.
You know what? If YouTube comes on you for using or reusing content on that opener, that's going to be upsetting.
You know what? We are going to be changing up, doing some different stuff. If they want to do that, by God, let them come after me for it. I'm just like, you know what? I'm not gonna give. There's so much going on right now with freedom of speech, and we're going to talk about that tonight. This will be one of the topics tonight. What you can and you can't do, what you can and you can't talk about. But freedom of speech is supposed to be this huge thing and protected. And when you look into it, you find out, well, it's like a government thing. It's a rule that keeps the government from doing something. But there is no rule that says the government cannot influence YouTube or Rumble or Odyssey or Twitter or any other thing from having them do it for them, because they can't. They can't come up with laws to silence us, but they sure as shit can get us banned all over the place, here and there and everywhere, from using our freedom of speech, as long as we follow a couple of rules. As long as we, you don't threaten anybody to physical harm. You're not slander. No slander in print. That's called libel. There's some rules, and we're going to go over some of that tonight. What you can and you can't do. But for the most part, that protection, that First Amendment right, is to keep the government from imposing the rules that these places are imposing for them anyway. So, anyway, good evening, everybody.
I could feel the fire coming off.
I'm
the heat is there.
Starting to sweat.
Testosterone rising, adrenaline pumping.
Well, yes. It pisses me off. It really does, because a lot of the stuff that we figured out, our generation X, we pretty much had all this handled. Yeah, there was a few bad apples that went after people and did some, sick, repugnant shit, but for the most part, a lot of us were just like, hey, you do you and we'll do us, and as long as you aren't hurting kids or any of that shit, right. So be it. And right. They've completely eviscerated that. So,
right.
I think they made it their mission to destroy it, almost as much as Disney made its mission to destroy Star Wars and Lucasfilm and everything we gotta love. It's going hand in hand, ladies and gentlemen. So, yeah, we will get back to it. Let me welcome Pat S. Good evening, Pat S. Snorted Poop Skewer, my favorite polar bear on YouTube, is here. Good evening, Snorted Poop Skewer. Claude Saline is here. Good evening, Penny. What is up, Penny? Good evening. Walter Tomascu is here. Good evening, Walter. He says, Jello pudding, Papa. No, we're not going to do that, guy, because, yeah. I put something in the pudding, Pop. I bet you did, you bastard. Lady Mist, the Guardian of the Void, is here. Good evening, Lady Mist. It is absolutely wonderful to see you. Good evening, Chris Persia. The Wrench of Wrenches is here. Good evening, Chris. Thank you for pulling double duty today. Brandon Looney Tunes fan 2000, as far as I can see, was the first. He said, "What's up?" First one here. Good evening, Brandon. So yeah. What do you got for us tonight? I feel almost like saying Johnny. What do you got for us tonight, Johnny? A new car. Anyway.
Yeah, no, not so much luck there. Sorry. No new cars. I've been working on a few things, and I ran into some stuff. Those of you who may follow Joe Malazzi on Twitter, he throws out these things every day of these really weird ways people died in the past, like toilet accidents, or there was a fun one 2 days ago where this lady found out her husband was cheating on her, so she decided to commit suicide out of their apartment. She jumped out the window, but didn't die. She ended up in the hospital. Her fall was
God.
broken when she landed on her husband and killed him. So he
Holy
was gone,
shit.
and she wasn't held responsible.
Oh,
So those are the type
wow.
of things that he does. But I had some that were mysterious. I got a whole slew of them, but I think I'm just going to cover a couple of them. One for you Canadian folks up there, and maybe a couple more that are kind of interesting. Some of them are a little boring yet mysterious. Um, this one, you Canadian people, apparently some of you are supposed to know. It's kind of renowned. This one is the story of Tom Thompson. It's a Canadian painter. Tom Thompson was last seen setting out on a fishing trip in a canoe on July 8th, 1917, when his body was found floating in a canoe lake 8 days later. The circumstances behind the young artist's demise became one of Canada's most infamous mysteries. Yes, I am reading that wrong. I like saying Canada, so don't get me a hard time. There were two unusual aspects about the body that led many to believe he hadn't simply fallen overboard. A piece of fishing line was wrapped 16 times around Thompson's ankle, and there was a wound on his temple. Some investigators agree that the accidental drowning theory, but if it was an accident, what caused it? It's possible that Thompson's canoe simply hit a piece of floating debris from a nearby logging operation. Some have even suggested that the unlikely, but technically possible scenario that he was hit by a sudden tornado. That one I think is pretty funny. Others have suggested that Thompson received a blow to the head, possibly from a paddle. There's also the possibility of suicide, that Thompson purely drowned himself using the fishing line to tie a weight around his ankle. The murder theories are even more numerous. Among the proposed suspects are American draft dodgers hoping to stay anonymous and poachers going to desperate lengths to hide their activities. Perhaps enemy spies or saboteurs were hiding in the woods, planning to attack the nearby train tracks used to transport goods bound for the war effort in Europe. None of them would have wanted Thompson to report being spotted. Weird ideas, you hear all those crazy theories. Um, this one's short. It's kind of cool. In 1930, Alfred Rouse attempted to fake his own death by bludgeoning a man over the head with a mallet and burning the body in his car. He was spotted fleeing the scene and was eventually hanged for the crime. However, the identity of the victim is unknown. For a long time, it was thought that the victim may have been William Thomas Briggs. Briggs had gone missing on his way to a doctor's appointment around the time of the murder. He was similar in appearance to Rouse and would have been an ideal victim for the hoax. At the start of 2014, members of the Briggs family arranged to have the DNA test done to finally put the mystery to rest. But when the results came back, the DNA didn't match, opening up two separate mysteries. Who was the man murdered by Rouse, and what actually happened to Briggs? While the later question will probably never be answered, DNA technology may eventually lead to the identification of the murder victim. There's a few more. Some of them are kind of interesting. I'm going to get to one. It's a little disgusting, but I thought it was kind of cool simply because of the name and the end circumstance. It's called the Atlas Vampire. Lily Landstrom was a 32-year-old divorcee living in Stockholm in the 1930s. She lived in a small apartment and made her living as a prostitute. On May 1st, 1932, she was discussing plans for the evening with May Day celebrations, or evening's May Day celebrations. I guess it's a Sweden holiday. May Day celebration with her friend Minnie Jansen, a 32-year-old woman who lived in the same floor and made her living the same way. Lily was nicknamed the call girl because she was the one and only person in the building with a phone. Lily received a call from a potential client, asked if he could come over. Lily agreed, and Minnie left her to it. Minnie only saw her friend alive again briefly later that day when the younger woman called to borrow condoms. When Minnie knocked on Lily's door several hours later, there was no answer. Minnie thought that perhaps Lily had gone to the celebration with the man. It wasn't until 3 days later that the police were finally called. After 3 days, you could start to smell it too. When they broke down the door, Lily was found face down in her bed, completely naked, with the condom still in her anus. She'd been killed by 3 blows to the head from a blunt object. Her clothes were neatly folded nearby. Yet, there was an even more disturbing and sinister aspect to this murder. In the room was a blood-stained gravy ladle. Further inspection revealed that the blood had been drained from Lily's body, and the killer had used the ladle to drink it. Despite the authorities' best efforts, the story leaked, and the local press nicknamed the unknown killer as the Atlas Vampire due to the area in the city where Lily lived. 80, get that number, 80 of Lily's customers were investigated, but no suspects were revealed. Minnie hadn't recognized the voice on the phone from what she had heard, but she commented that the man had seemed sober and polite. There didn't seem to be any fingerprints on any of the suspicious items at the scene. One theory was that the killer was a police officer who had bludgeoned Lily with his, I don't know how to pronounce this, tronchien. It had to have been like a billy club, and knew how to cover his tracks. Either way, Lily's final customer was never found. I just thought, that was particularly disturbing because he drank her blood. So I have a ton more, but I kind of want to get into this thing that you wanted to talk about.
If you want to go for it, we can go for it.
Now we'll save them for another time. Like I said, there's a ton of them, and I can probably
right.
Pick a topic and then share one each time before I do a topic each week.
It's funny because you mentioned, because if anybody has been here, for a while, you will know that me and Adega often come up with similar topics without ever talking to each other. I actually was going to read a story about it is a dark age period story about a countess that ended up getting turned into a vampire and drinking people's blood. And I decided to table that for another night.
There's another funny thing about this too, is I was going to show you this, and I'm sure Pat wouldn't mind. He contacted me after last week's show, and he mentioned that right after our show, there is a big YouTube channel. I think he's got about 1.5 million viewers, and he talked about the Grinning Man. That was right after our show when he went and posted his.
It's crazy.
Quite amazing how, if I or you give out we stopped this years ago, give out the subject matter of what we're going to talk about, inevitably someone does it 2 days before us. So we stopped doing that.
Yep. So I want to read something out real quick, and we'll get to this discussion. These are permissible restrictions on expressions guaranteed by the First Amendment. You've got some historically rooted expressions. Government may generally restrict the time, place, and manner of speech if the restrictions are unrelated to what the speech says and leave people with enough alternative ways of expressing their views. Thus, for instance, the government may restrict the use of loudspeakers in residential areas. Right? That's you would agree with that, right?
Yep.
Limit all demonstrations that block traffic. I wonder why they don't do that anymore.
Right.
Or ban picketing of people's homes. Wow, the Supreme Court guys got slammed by that, but they allowed it, but it's against the law. A few narrow categories of speech are not protected from government restrictions. These are called defamation, which Johnny Depp knows all about, and Amber
Yep.
Heard, fraud, obscenities, child, what, that,
Yep.
people taking advantage of kids, threats, threats against someone's life. The Supreme Court held in Brandenburg versus Ohio in 1969, the government may forbid incitement speech directed at inciting or producing imminent lawlessness and action. What does that mean? That means if some guy says burn down the whole damn city, that's against the law. You can't do that. Something that is likely to incite or produce like mob attacks or BLM or Antifa or any of them doing what they do, basically that's not allowed. That's illegal. You can go to jail for that, even though they don't. Defamatory lies, which is called libel if written and slander if spoken. Lying under oath, fraud, in some instances, neglect, negligent factual errors that can lead to a lawsuit. There are exceptions. So while the government itself cannot make a law that violates your First Amendment speech, it doesn't matter as long as you can as long as they have the ability to contact a company and say, we do not want you doing this, and the company follows suit, that is absolutely positively legal because they didn't make a law against it. They're just working with the company to cut out you having the ability to say something or do something.
Well,
which means you can get cut off the
just kind
platform.
of changed that for the United States, where they made it clear that the government cannot do that.
Yes, and that is being it is becoming very difficult for them to continue to doing that, even though it's happening under the table and sites like YouTube and even Twitter still. Yes, it's still happening on Twitter.
Facebook,
with
big
Mr.
time.
Musk. Facebook, big time. They are working with these companies to silence you.
Now, the original intent of the First Amendment was, a right to assemble, all of those aspects, and speech. Speech at the time was understand the debate or expression of ideas vocally. It did not mean that burning property. It did not mean taking away other people's ability to move, or it was about speech, actual language, not the performance of actions or doing actions against someone else. So the interpretation of speech has been, like a lot of things, degraded over time for the sole fact of being able to cause problems in the community, to sow division. Where if it was strictly a point of debating ideas, those who oppose the First Amendment would lose hands down every time. So it comes to violence, silence, and abuse in order for them to destroy those freedoms.
And Chris Persia asked a question. He says, wait, Loki, you mean it's illegal for a politician to say if you see a politician from the other party or someone that votes that way, you need to immediately surround them and force them out of town? Yes, that is illegal.
Yes. But that's in the States.
That's in the States. That's in the United States. I understand what happened recently in Canada. And yes, that is illegal in the United States. However, there are ways around everything. And the more we see elites get away with whatever they want to get away with, the more we realize that we are being hoodwinked. Let's say you have private security that you pay for, and you have that private security escort that person out and make them leave. That is not the government making them leave. That is not the town making them leave. That is not the police force making them leave. That is a private security company. And they will go ahead and do that. It is the same way they get around on the technical side of going through YouTube or going through Twitter or going through Facebook or going through any of these other sites where they can point their finger and say, we do not allow this. We do not want this. You need to take care of it. Why are they doing that? Because because the people on the other end are listening and obeying. And all it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. And that's exactly what is happening. Good people are saying, yes, sir, 3 bags full. I'll do anything you say because I'm too afraid to be on the other side of you. So I'm going to keep you happy so you don't point your finger at me and get rid of me like you have these other people. It is called living in a state of fear. Welcome to America. And that sucks.
There
That
are
really sucks.
a lot of signs where that is starting to change. It's the best thing and also the biggest weakness of America is actually a word that has been misused, is its tolerance. The whole point of being a melting pot is the acceptance of other people for who they are, what they celebrate, what those type of things. But that over the years has been abused and used as a shaming tool to prevent good people from standing up. And the good people will think, well, you know what? I do have to be more tolerant. But the boiling point has been reached with naked people dancing in front of children and those type of things that are going on. We are starting to see the cascade of the money shifting, of the new alternate both currency and marketplace that are starting to develop, that are getting out of the system, and they're starting to panic. That's why the efforts to silence is getting more intense. That's why in the period of not many years, just 3 years, 4 years, some of these cities in the States have gone downhill really, really quick, and to rile people up and to cause them to hate each other and to cause discord. But it's not going to work. I've told this to Loki many, many times that things will get bad, but there are enough good people that will correct the problem. At least here in the States, I don't have a feel for other countries. And we're starting to see it get bad. Every generation says, oh, it's horrible now. But when you have the abject depravity that is being celebrated by newspapers and celebrities and even politicians, in the face of the people who are trying to do good, trying to go to church, trying to do this, they're not going to take it anymore. And it's why Bud Light was one of the first ones to see it fall. Disney is feeling it. We're getting a grip
One-third of
on
their
it.
assets, one-third of their assets are for sale.
Yep. But that goes to
As of
freedom.
earlier today. It's funny we talked about that this morning.
Right.
And then
Right.
later today, a third of their assets are for sale.
But that goes with the freedom of speech, is they're trying to prevent the ideas that the good people are starting to push out, men and women. We have some really strong women in the States nowadays that are, you got Carrie Lake, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and you may not agree with their politics, but you got to admit they're fighting for you. But the men and women are starting to stand up, and as bad and as evil as things look, it's all going to be turned around. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean it's going to be quick. It doesn't mean it's going to be pretty. But the good people are going to overcome this. You watch.
And over time, this has to shift, and this has to be prevented from happening again. Part of the problem, and I've talked about this before, part of the problem here is we're not supposed to have monopolies in this country. Monopoly bad.
Nope.
In fact,
Yep.
you've got the FTC going after the Activision Xbox Microsoft deal because Microsoft is not supposed to obtain a monopoly on gaming. Yet we've seen that over the course of how long now? YouTube pretty much has no one to challenge it. I think the biggest challenge so far, and it's not a contender, it's just like on the way up so far, is Rumble. And it's got a long way to go before it can go even get in the ring with YouTube. So where does that leave us? Well, you have to be very careful what you say in the shit you put on here. Why? Because they will kill it. Because they have people in the back that are being told you need to kill this. Anything they do here, anything they say here, if they bring this up, you need to kill it. That's what was going on with Twitter before Elon Musk bought it, but it's gone right back to that anyway. It's not
Well,
as
we knew
bad
his
as it was,
CEO.
but
It was only a matter of time before that new CEO was going to start pulling her pranks from her masters. So,
and then
because she
that's what it
doesn't,
comes down to.
right? She doesn't answer to Elon as much as the paper says. She answers to the World Economic Forum.
This is how you sidestep a law. And they would sidestep your Second Amendment rights. They will sidestep all of these amendment rights if they can. But the biggest two hurdles, ladies and gentlemen, are freedom of speech and the Second Amendment. Those are the
Yep.
two biggest hurdles they have to get by. And if they can get a company to do it for them, they will. Doesn't matter whether it's YouTube. Doesn't matter whether it's Rumble. Doesn't matter whether it's Disney. Doesn't matter whether it's anybody. If you will report to them, then they control you and they control what comes out of you. That means they cannot be trusted to look out for your best interest, period, because they're looking out for the best interest of their masters, not you.
Yep. Yep. And the sole goal of their masters is just to be masters of everyone. And we all know it, whether it come through finance, agriculture, with housing, doesn't matter. They're power hungry. They've had their fill of doing horrible things behind the scenes that Sound of Freedom is described only slightly. Those of you who know me and have heard me innuendo, here's the thing. I think I mentioned it a few years ago. It resurfaced recently. Look up the Red Shoe Club, and you'll start to see what I mean. But
Dave Bob,
those.
oh, go ahead. I know you're.
No,
I didn't.
Dave Bob.
I'm just gonna say, what Dave Bob brings up here is very important because originally, and I love when this argument gets brought up because I love turning super leftists on their heads and them going, "Huh? What? What did you say?" Yeah, that's what I thought. The entire idea behind the Second Amendment was that the people, if ever under rule of someone like a king, a tyrant, someone that was trying to subject them to the same types of lawlessness that the King of England was at the time of the Revolutionary War, if anything like that ever happened again, the people could stand up and take back the government and restore what the founding fathers set down. Rifle for rifle, cannon for cannon, we had the ability to defend ourselves.
Yep.
That is not the way it is anymore. We do not have F-16s. We do not have M1 Abrams tanks. We do not have planes. We do not have bombs. We do not have all of that. We have our ingenuity and we have rifles. And they do not want you to have rifles because rifle in a land battle is a great equalizer. They do not want you to have those. They want to get rid of all automatic, semi-automatic. They want rid of all of that. A one-shot hunting rifle is the most they want you to have. Why? Because you can't lead an insurrection with that. You can't stand toe-to-toe and take back what has been taken from you. You cannot defend your freedoms with something like that. But even then, we are as a people are at a huge disadvantage because we don't have military gear. We can't fight one-on-one. It's not the same situation. And they say even then, well, that's even more reason to take it all away because you don't need it. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine saying, I have this, for protection in case shit goes down. And them saying we've got M60s and we've got F-16s and we've got M1 tanks and we've got bombs and we've got all this shit. So you don't have to have that. Give it to us.
Reason why they haven't been completely successful is they're still afraid of the billions of guns that are in the hands of the U.S. citizens.
Especially in Texas. I do believe the saying is a rifle behind every blade of grass in Texas.
Yeah, that's a lot of the Midwest. An awful lot. Chris Persia had mentioned something. You're in the wrong direction when it says new member of or from the WEF with the red shoes. I am going to hint at it. Shoes of those type are made of leather. It's the type of leather and what they're dyed in is what you're looking for. And I won't go in any more detail than that.
And Asajj, I wasn't saying we did. I'm saying that ingenuity and never giving up and to the last man carries more weight to me than any F-16 or M1 Abrams. They use that as an excuse to take away people's guns. They use that as an excuse. Well, you don't need it because you've got F-16s, you've got M1. What could you do against that? What could you
There's
do
also
against
another.
that? So why do you need it?
There's also another thing, and this is why we have shows that come out like you talk about it all the time, and they're set trying their best to divide people. But there is an old saying, and it comes from the wisdom of the greatest generation: united we stand, divided we fall. And it's even used in other phrases long before that. A unified people is unbeatable. A divided people, that's how you take them down.
That's right.
And when you silence the attempts at unification, they think they're winning. But we have other ways around it, all kinds of ways around it.
And I'll
Like I said,
remind. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Please finish.
no, it was just like I said before. I am have a very strong belief and anticipating the overcoming of the evil that has beset our nation, this one first, and then we can move on to others.
Let me remind all of you who are listening real quick that in the 1930s and the 1940s, you had neighbors selling out neighbor. You had families reporting families. You had people getting rid of their neighbors just so they could own their property. You had people selling out families that were protecting families. Does that sound familiar at all?
Mm-hmm.
Neighbor versus neighbor, families versus families, people getting rid of people. I mean, shit, just take a look on YouTube. Take a look on YouTube and look what's happening. You've got people in this business reporting other people just to get rid of them. You've got people in this business reporting people because they don't agree with them. This is the definition of neighbor versus neighbor.
Yep.
And it's going to get worse before it gets better because YouTube is playing this game, and they'll keep playing this game. As long as they feel like, well, we're going to be the special kid, we're going to be the one that works with it, we're going to be the one that does what mommy and daddy tell us to do, and we'll be favored above all others. And if something happens, maybe they'll just be there to bail us out because we've said yes, man, three bags full. It's not going to change. Dean Krantz says, I will inject an opinion observation here. The revolution, we were fighting initially for our rights as Englishmen. That was missing. But once the fighting had begun, we became Americans. No taxation without representation, which we are right back to where we were.
Right.
They decide who has to pay and who doesn't. They decide who goes to jail and who doesn't. And if they don't like you and they don't agree with you, they'll send you to jail. If they like you, they will make a deal with you and they will bend the knee and show sovereignty because you are favored. Sound familiar? Sure as shit sounds familiar to me.
Yep.
Saj Melody says it sounds familiar. Where the hell are we at when all a government has to do is sidestep a rule and have a company do it for them? Because that company wants to kiss their ass and wants to make good and wants to profit because of the government. Oh, you'll take care of this for us, right? You'll prevent any competition, right? Radio companies used to do that. Or, oh my God, I can't believe I can't remember his name. Was it Goebbels?
Yeah.
Radios companies did that in World War II in Germany. They sold out. They lied.
Well, there's also growing pains too. It's a combined problem, because anytime there's a significant advancement in technology, there are growing pains. My grandfather, great grandfather, had this when the automobile came in, because they were blacksmiths. They worked on shoeing horses and mules and different things. And the automation and that type of, yes, my parents were that old, came in. It changed the industry. There was a lot of strikes, a lot of strife and different things, but they had to grow. We have a technology, and even before then, just a little bit before that, where they had, it's been over 100 years since all the news agencies had been bought out. You think that it's a recent thing. No, they've been controlling the information for a long time. I'm trying to think of the name. It wasn't the Rockefellers, but it was one of those old families when they had done that. Might have been Morgan. But it was, now we have more freedom and the growing pains are hitting, and we have to have the new laws, the new rationale to match what we have been given in the way of technology. So there are growing pains, but there's also the elimination of evil people that got to it before we did.
And these laws, in major part, these amendments are there to show us the way if our government has failed us. And our government has failed us. It's not just the Democrats. I know Dean Krantz says, "Did you see how Democrats on the Oversight Committee voted to censor RFK?" Yes, I did. And I listened to what happened. And I listened to him sit there and say, "This is the last job I ever freaking wanted." Both sides have failed. One side is too chicken shit and pussy to stand up for itself and say, "Hey, what you're doing is absolute ass." And the other side is running roughshod over everyone and everything to have their way. Someone has to step up and stand up and say enough is enough. You're out of line. You're out of line. Get your shit together or get out.
Yep. It makes you wonder what kind of man RFK Jr. is that the Democrats are trying to censor him. Normally they hold up other Democrats. There's even a few Republicans that are trying to censor him. And I think if it comes down to Trump and RFK, I don't care which one wins, because they're both outsiders fighting for people. It's far better than what we've had.
How did we get here? We got here through apathy, greed, and the people that were supposed to be defending the gate were asleep on the job.
Yep.
And that goes for what's going on in New York. That goes for what's going on in Texas, where I'm at right now. That goes Arizona, all of it. Asleep at the fucking wheel, asleep at the job. How did you get here? How did you freaking get here? That's how we got here. This was the land of freedom. This was the land of opportunity. This was the land of fresh beginnings. This was a land where if you owned something, it was yours. And that's not the way it is anymore. They want to take, and they want to take, and they want to take. And it's harder and harder for a human being to stand up and say, I want to excel at something, I want to build something, I want to create, I want to explore, and that gets shut down. Why? Because you do not need to draw outside of the fucking lines. These are the lines. This is where you're allowed to draw in. That's it. And if
Right.
you step outside of that, well, shit, son. You better be prepared. Because either they're going to go, well, you have to do all of this stuff to kiss our ass and make it, or you've come out of nowhere and done something completely unexpected, and they're not going to let that happen again. I will supply
Loki
the
gave
war.
me the keys to the garage. Sorry.
No. I love that. Send me the pictures. I'll supply the war.
Well, he had mentioned that Pulitzer was the guy that was looking for the name, and he's right. Back in his day, that's why there's a prize. But it was all about being able to early on manipulate their form of mass media, which happened to be the newspaper and
Right.
any periodicals that came out.
And good evening, Angelus Draven. Good to see you.
A
Dave Bob
local
says, toe the
vampire.
line or disappear. Toe the line or disappear.
Sounds
Why is
like
that?
any normal commie or fascist Yahtzee regime that's ever existed. They all do the same thing. And it makes you, here's the thing, too, in the Western society, for the most part, especially the United States, where we have a higher standard of living or quality of living than most of the world. I wouldn't say all the way. There's places that, it's easier, especially nowadays, but usually it isn't the case. But the wealth of the nation, 90% of what we produce is being taken through taxation, manipulation of farms, all these other things, and shelled out to all these other places around the world. It says a lot about the Western society, and I'm thinking of the US in particular, where the treasures of it have been manufactured by the citizens so greatly and in such quantity that it can be squandered at such a rate, and yet we're still plugging along. That's something you could commend each other for, is that we are highly industrious despite all the things they've been trying to do to us.
And give away.
Yep.
Not just do to us, but give away.
Yep.
Your hard-earned money, your time, your effort, your sweat, your blood, your tears, all of it.
Yep. And granted, a lot of that is being put into debt too, but that debt isn't being spent on roads and planes and infrastructure. It's being spent in buying politicians and foreign wars and all kinds of things that no one should be paying for.
It's funny you mentioned debt, because I went and I got food. We got foods. We got noms. Food, non-foodies out today. And next to I had to wait for mine. I had to wait like 10 minutes for mine. And right next to it is a Warhammer 40K store. I went in there just to look around, I wasn't going to spend any money.
Sure,
Me, I
you
can't
did.
right
Sure.
now. I didn't spend any money. Absolutely not. But
I'm
there was a group of
impressed.
guys that were sitting there, and they're all painting. They're all painting their figures, and they're talking. And the owner's like, hey, what can I do for you? I'm like, I'm just looking. Snort knows he wants the noms too. So I'm just looking around and I'm listening to their conversation. I'm not trying to overhear their conversation. I'm just within earshot. And one of the guys is talking about how he was absolutely pissed and wanted to do something to the Supreme Court because they did not approve the student debt relief. He said, I've got $18,000 left in my student debt, and I thought it was going to be gone because they're Pell Grants, and I'm sitting there, I'm going, well, if it was a Pell Grant,
right,
then that should
don't
have
have to pay
been
those back.
You don't have to pay those back, which means that he was in college and he dropped out.
Yep.
That's the only time you have to pay those back. Because they asked him why didn't it cover this, and he said, well, it was a Pell Grant, and I can have up to 20,000 and it be taken care of. This is your choice. It's your choice to go to college. I understand it's expensive. I understand that it is expensive. However, there's also community colleges and other colleges, and you can get your degree and you can do some really good helping people.
Well, here's the
Okay.
thing, too, that shows for these students is when you go into college, and if you're going to go into debt, you have to make sure that whatever field you're going to, you're going to have the real possibility of being able to earn a living and pay it back. They don't even think about it. The counselors aren't even teaching that. All they're doing is say, you can have whatever class you want. We'll make sure you get the funding. They're not teaching them responsibility for their own lives, which is, I think, horrible.
And promising that the government will pay it back.
Right.
The government's most likely going to pay it back and you won't have to worry about it. That is idiocy. And there are going to be a lot of people that went to a year or two of college that left because they couldn't afford it, that are saddled with this for the rest of their lives and have no degree, all because they were told, oh, government will pay for it. You don't have to worry about it. Government's going to do this and it's going to do this and this is going to pass, and you're not going to have to worry about student loan debt anymore. And that's not true.
I already figured out the best way to take care of that. And there's other people that have mentioned it. You probably heard it before. But there are certain religions around the world and certain ideologues that came up with this. And I think it was a brilliant solution where, say, like, I know people that took out, and this is in a healthcare field, so the possibility of paying it back was kind of real, especially some of them that were going into conglomerates that existed and made a lot of money. But they'd take out $100,000-$200,000 in debt to get through chiropractic college, which for me seemed just sickening to my stomach, and yet they did. Well, when all's said and done, they're going to owe, say, $100,000. They'll probably owe $300,000 for all the interest payments.
Yes.
So they're buying a house. The problem here is, and easily resolved, it won't hurt the banks except for their greed, and it will save a ton of money for the students, and it will take a big bite out of the colleges for gouging, is to do a flat fee. You borrow $10, you have to pay $12 back. You borrow $10,000, you have to pay $1,200 back. That would take the burden off of everyone except for the greed of the banks. Just relieving the debt, all it does is make their own lives more miserable when they go to the grocery store. And you all know this. Everyone that's listening knows this. When you go to the grocery store and you find out that your carton of eggs that used to be 50 cents is now $2, guess why? In part because now you're paying for somebody else's student loans who got a gender study degree and can't find a reasonable job to pay even for their groceries because they were too stupid to find out that this degree means absolutely nothing. Or a fine arts degree where they learn how to paint upside down and weave a basket. It doesn't pay for anything instead of getting an actual education that will make them money in the long run.
So Asaj Melody points something out, and I want to bring this up. He says, if you doom yourself with debt, there are options if you have 7 years to wait for it to fall off your credit without burdening others with your responsibility. The difference with a school loan is that will never go away.
Yep.
It's like
You
fucking
can't declare
herpes.
bankruptcy.
You can't declare bankruptcy. And even if you don't pay it for 7 years, it's not going to go off your credit. The only way that would work is if you got the initial loan before the government took over all the school loans. So if you had a school loan before Obama was like, well, we're gonna take over all the debt and responsibility of school loans, before it became a government loan, then yes, you could wait 7 years and it would go away. Now it doesn't work like that. It'll stick to you like herpes until you pay it.
Yep.
So, and hello, Scumbag Billy. How are you doing, Scumbag Billy?
And that was
says
the
my
fun
ex-friend.
thing. I was right in between that before it started to, get tied up, and I had some debt, and I negotiated with one of the creditors. One was owned by the government, one wasn't. And I said, hey, I'm going to pay you this lump sum. Will that cover it? And it did everything except for some of the interest. And they said, sure. I made the same offer to the government. Said, hey, here's this. And they said no. So I had to pay it off the hard way. But it's just the difference of dealing with a private company versus the government. And now that it's the way it is, you're going to have to deal with the government regardless. Even the companies that say that they're independent, they still are being pulled by government regulation that basically means that they are owned by the government. Whether it be, I know some of the big ones. Anyway, I can't remember their names, but they're still government-owned entities, basically.
So Penny says more students are skipping college and going straight to the trade school instead,
Yes.
getting paid to learn and go straight into a job. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
And
Underwater basket weaving.
Yeah, there was also a thing too where I don't think my college would agree, but they don't like me anyway. It's a long story because my opinion didn't match with one of the people on the board, and he was drunk and wanted to fight in the parking lot and banned me from speaking at the schools anymore. It's a fun story. I'll have to tell it sometime.
Shit. Lady misses.
Yeah, but
I paid for my own college. I don't have to. The extra paid is for someone else's. Time in the Army helped. So put some time in service and get some college paid for too.
Yep. One of my patients became an attorney doing that. He was in the Army.
Idea. I had no
Became
idea.
a JAG officer.
I had no idea she was in the military.
Well, she's a guardian of the void.
She's the guardian. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Rifle at the ready, Marine. Oh, she said Army, not Marine Corps. Anyway, they didn't give me any discounts for my total lack of brains, but they did make me a professor.
All right.
That's right. Professor.
Well, he said his gender studies made him impressed about the female gender.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I studied genders in college. I found the female gender interesting and worthy of in-depth research. Hands-on in-depth research. Thank you, Snorted Poops Cuber, for reminding us.
Would expect no less from a polar bear.
Toga! That's what I have to say about college. What, man? Toga! Yes. Lady Miss says the Army thought I was a little scary. Holy shit.
That's why we love her here.
That's why we love her. We're going to get out of here.
One of us.
One of us. One of us. Yeah. We're going to get out of here. I want to thank Adega Outlaw. It's been a little different. I know we usually do like the spooky shit and the stories and stuff, but I wanted to get into this and have a discussion with Adega because I love these kinds of discussions with Adega. So.
Yeah, well, I always have fun.
Lady Miss says, Adega Outlaw, fabulous show. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening. You as well. Guardian of the Void, Lady Miss. So, Lady Miss, the Saz Melody, Chris Persia, the Wrench of Wrenches, Snorted Poops Cuber, Penny! I don't know how to say your name, dude. I know who that is from Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas, but yeah, I don't know how to say your name. I'm sorry. Is it Labos? Labos. That was
you got me. The symbols I don't understand.
That was a bad guy. That was a bad guy and Chrono Trigger. Labos. Thank you both for good night. Chris Persia, Saj Melody, Dave, Bob. Guys, take care. Be excellent to each other. Always speak friend to enter. We'll see you guys on the next 7 Kinds of Mischief with Adega Outlaw. Have a great night, everybody.
See ya.
I can find the damn out button.
Oh, you know what?
Button, who's...
These videos are tremendous. like, comment, and subscribe, and hammer that notification bell.